Hi, and welcome back to Alicia Makes Music. Today we're going to be learning We Make Space by Melissa and Jonathan Helser.
Oh, come and take a
So let's jump right in. This song is in the key of E major. So I highly recommend getting really familiar with this scale if you're not familiar with it already. So I'm basing this tutorial off of the live recording that's linked down below. And the pianist plays a lot of improvised parts. So I'll give you some tips on improvisation at the end, but there's two distinct parts that I want to teach you today that she plays. So the first one happens right before bridge 1A. This is where Melissa sings, "Oh, come and take up residence." It's super pretty. So this is what it sounds like. Just break that part down for you. So the left hand is basically playing almost like a syncopated dotted eighth note type of rhythm. It sounds like this. Ba, 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 ba. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and so on. So that's an ascending E major scale. E, F sharp, G sharp, and A, and each note is going to get 5 repetitions of that rhythmic pattern. Ba, 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 ba. And at the same time, the right hand is going to be playing this pattern. I like to add the thumb or the B for whenever I'm not playing that B. So for every other note, I like to add the B just to make it sound a bit more full. So B, like that. Okay, so it repeats twice, repeats 3 times, and then this time it goes to that G sharp, and then the pattern repeats again. And this time it goes up to B. So as you're playing that, because it's multiple rhythms happening at the same time, it's really important that you nail the hands separately so that when you put it hands together, it sounds like a coherent and consistent rhythmic pattern. If you find that to be a little bit too complicated with the syncopated left hand, you can just play the left hand in a more straight fashion, so like this. Still sounds just as beautiful. Okay. One thing I might add is when the right hand goes like this, the left hand switches from just playing E, F sharp, G sharp, A to going up to that D sharp. So it sounds like this. It's a really kind of crunchy part there, which is nice. So let's move on to the next part.
There's space for you. There is space for you. There is space for you.
The next part happens right before the vamp. This is where Melissa sings, "Bye-bye, clutter." I love that part. Hands together, this is what it would sound like. So basically, we'll start again with the left hand. It's the same as what we did before. I'm just deciding to play octaves this time. So E, F sharp, G sharp, A. It's a simple walk-up chord progression. And then the right hand goes ba da da da. And in between each of those notes, you're going to be playing E and B. So we have B, A, ba, bum, ba, bum, 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 bum. And then the pattern repeats again. Bum, 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 bum. So that happens 3 times. This is the 3rd time. And then on the 4th time, you're going to stay on that F sharp. And then go to the D sharp. And then back to the E. I'll play that last part again for you. Bum, ba, da, bum, ba, da, bum, ba, da, bum, bum. okay? I'll try that hands together. A little slower. Try your best to kind of like accent the top notes so that your listener kind of knows what they're listening for. Okay. Now let's move on to some general improvisation tips. So in general, in contemporary Christian music or most Western music, we're basing our improvisation off of the Ionian scale or the major scale. So within the major scale, there's notes called tendency tones, and those are notes that tend to resolve to one another. Our ears are naturally kind of conditioned to have these notes resolve to one another. So I'll give you an example. In your E major scale, the 7 is always going to want to resolve to the 1, the 7th scale degree, or the 7th note in the scale. Ti, do. Another tendency tone would be the 4 to the 3, fa, mi, the 5 to the 1, so, do, and then the 6 to the 5. Okay, so those are just some tendency tones. So as you're improvising, it's really pleasing to the ear to use those tendency tones to your advantage. So you can create tension by intentionally landing on those tendency tones and then resolving them. So I'm going to give you an example of what not to do. I'm going to just improvise on the chord progression E, F sharp, E in first inversion, and then A. And I'm going to play a melody that almost sounds like I just want it to resolve. So let me give you an example of what not to do. So if you notice, the melody sounded a little bit scattered, and it sounded jazzy at some points, which is nice. But if that's not your intention, which it is not my intention in this particular improvisation, then you want those notes to resolve to one another. I'll give you another example of how to use those tendency tones to your advantage. Another improv tip is choose a simple musical pattern and kind of play on it a little bit. So let's say if my musical pattern is, let's do simple, mi, re, do. It would be a good idea to use that musical pattern and repeat it throughout your improvisation. You can make slight alterations to it, whether that be rhythmically, dynamically, adding other neighbor notes to it. It's always nice to have a sense of repetition, that your listener can have a sense of familiarity to the melody that you're playing. So I'll give you an example with that as like my main motif or my main melody. And we're going to kind of expand that simple motivic idea. So what you might have noticed there is I made multiple adjustments. I adjust the rhythm. I kind of expanded the melody by playing it in octaves. Sometimes I use neighbor notes, which is a note beside it, whether to the right or the left. So it just kind of gives you, again, it gives your listener a sense of familiarity, and it allows your improvisation to be a little bit more creative because you're taking a simple melodic idea and you're expanding it over time. The last improvisation tip I want to give you is if you're playing this song in the context of a band, it's important to really listen to what the other musicians around you are doing, whether that be their dynamic or certain rhythmic patterns that you might hear the drummer do or the bass player. Sometimes it's nice to play off of what they're doing. And you want to kind of just feel the vibe of the room. Like if it's, let's say we're at the end of this song, maybe we're at like a down bridge. Oh, come and take up residence. So the chord chart that I'm using says you're just going to stay on the 1 and then to the E suspended chord. go back to the one. So let's say you're improvising over those chords. It wouldn't be appropriate to play like super loud with a, oh my bad. Unless the room and the singers are indicating that you should be playing in that way. So in general, just feel out what's happening in the room. What are the other musicians doing? How is the Lord leading you to play in that moment? And use those cues to make intentional musical decisions. So say we're making that beautiful declaration to the Lord, oh, come and take up residence. In my mind, that phrase sounds light. It sounds airy. So maybe that translates to more of a quiet moment, maybe less movement would be happening at that point. So musically, I would probably choose to do, just like a gentle rocking back and forth feel with my right hand. So for example, he'd go like this. With the vocals, it'll sound like, oh, come and take up residence. Jesus, Jesus, welcome in. I hope that was super helpful for you. Keep on playing for Jesus.
We're clear.